I wonder how spaced out we feel about issues when at this point in time we are all dealing with the most unprecedented, shall I say, crisis, or rather a situation of modern world history, 21st century, which no individual or government has ever anticipated or envisaged. All over India, millions of migrant workers were reportedly fleeing its shuttered cities and trekking home to their villages during May June 2020. AMRA responded to the crisis in its best capacity when migration was at its peak. We did our bit by distributing sanitary napkins, toiletries, sanitization products for women in 30 ml handy bottles, which could easily be carried even if women were to cover long distances on foot. The pandemic has wreaked havoc into the lives of people in multiple ways. It has not only affected bodies but also scarred minds. Its physical and psychosocial health effects require prompt attention and care of the persons and families getting impacted, more so in the case of more vulnerable sections of society, girls and women. We are all familiar with the reports of a phenomenal rise in mental distress and domestic violence. It has been reported that this unusual spurt is only the tip of the iceberg, as 86% women who experienced violence never sought help, and 77% of victims did not even mention the incident to anyone. An increase in depression, suicide, and cybercrime against women are being reported from all across the world. We appeal to you all to associate with this humanitarian cause for the general good of women and Ma Bharati. I once again welcome our esteemed guests and you all.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Mental Health and Youth Edition 2, commemorating World Health Day 2021 with the theme Mindfully Resilient. This webinar is brought to you by Ambra Foundation, a Delhi-based nonprofit organization championing in women's causes since the year 2012. I would now like to introduce to you Ms. Vinita Bakshi, who is a social entrepreneur heading various projects aimed at development in India. She is also the author of 31 Miles, a novel which was published in the year 2017. After having a long-term career as a director in the National Institute of Jewelry, Ms. Vinita Bakshi founded Ambra Foundation with the wider objective of empowering women through skilling and advocacy. Under the aegis of the foundation, Ms. Vinita Bakshi has been engaged in various projects promoting social and cultural development. Yes. Now we can have Ms. Vinita Bakshi. She will introduce you to the other speakers and our guest keynote speaker, Dr. Tulsi, as well.
Thank you, Apollina. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the burgeoning of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. William Ernest Hanley, Invictus, is one of my favorite poems on springing back, especially in current times. आपने सुना है कभी सीधा पेड़ गिर जाता है, but if you bend, you may survive the storm. Adaptability. The oak fought the wind and was broken. The willow bent when it must and survived. Resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it's less attractive than what you had before. Survival of the fittest is a phrase that originated from Darwinian evolutionary theory as a way of describing the mechanism of natural selection. Back here in India, we have many ancient texts and techniques which lay more emphasis on the role of mind in resilience. So I would go a step further and say survival of the fittest does not depend on physical fitness or physical resilience alone. Rather, it depends upon mental or mindful resilience. Strong minds win the battle against any adversary, physical or mental, real or imagined. Two important philosophies born in the West. One, capitalism, based on the premise of competition, and socialism or communism based on the principle of revolution, both overemphasize social and external change. How are we different? How are we different in India, in Indian philosophy and Indian thought process? I quote from an Indian philosopher born in last century, Krishnamurti, who became extremely popular in West. Can we bring about in the very essence of our being a total revolution, a psychological mutation, so that we are no longer brutal, violent, competitive, anxious, fearful, greedy, envious, and all of the rest of the manifestations of our nature which have built up the rotten society in which we live our daily lives today. Tell me, is it possible to change this society or this world if we keep expecting other people and external factors to change favorably for us? Can it ever happen? How can we bring about change in such a mercurial world? Answer is very simple. As quoted in Manduka Upanishada and many other ancient Indian texts, and has resonated from the voice of Shankaracharya to Vivekananda to Mahatma Gandhi, we will have to change ourselves, means inner change or change in our own mindsets. Be the change you want to see in others, said Gandhiji. Most of us are aware each of us has two selves, true us and our social selves, a byproduct of internalization and external influences. We may call it a thousand names, but spiritual awakening is the state of mind that is free from all domains of life and is only attained by securing the awareness from within. It is my favorite subject, and I can go on and on forever. But we have young voices with us today, and eminent Dr. Tulasi as our keynote speaker, whom I shall introduce in a while. And from Young Voices, Anantya Rai, who's pursuing her bachelor's in psychology, she will be presenting on mindful resilience during pandemic. Mitali Rathi is a young psychology counselor, and today she will be introducing PTSD and how resilience can help during moments of stress and anxiety. Divisha Singh, a psychology graduate, will talk about 5 factors affecting resilience and the work of Angela Duckworth. Karishma Singala, a student who's currently pursuing her bachelor's in applied psychology, will be introducing 7 C's of resilience. Shweta Shah, a graduate in psychology, will be talking about building emotional resilience through mindfulness. And I'm very happy to present our interns. And in a while, I should introduce Dr. Tulasi. I request our group of interns to take up the topics one by one. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Vinita ma'am. So now we have Divisha first. Divisha,
Yeah. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Divisha, and I am going to talk about what resilience is, 5 factors that help you build resilience, and the work of Angela Duckworth. So, let me start by telling you what resilience is. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from a stressful situation. In more scientific manner, it is the ability to spring off from a stressful situation and go back to the pre-crisis state. It is made up of 5 factors, and the 5 factors that contribute to it are mindfulness, self awareness, self care, purpose, and the fifth and the last one is um, self emotions, regulating self emotions. So, let me tell you how each of the factors contribute to building resilience. Number one is mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is being aware of your surrounding and everything that is happening inside you and around you. How does it contribute uh, to being resilient? When you're more aware of your surrounding, when you're more aware of what's happening inside of you and outside of you, you have that strength, you have that awareness that you can use to build your resilience. Number two is self care. How does self care contribute to building resilience? Self care, when you are caring for yourself, you are telling your psyche that you love yourself, you matter, your needs matter, your wants matter. And in the process of telling that to your psyche, you are strengthening your abilities. And by that, you are contributing to building resilience. Number three is self awareness. When you're aware of yourself, you're aware of your strengths, your weaknesses. What are you good at? What are you not good at? So when you're in a crisis, you exactly know what approach to take using your strengths to get over it, to get beyond it. And that is how knowing about your strengths and weaknesses can help you get through the stressful situation. Number four is purpose. What is purpose? Purpose is knowing the direction that you're supposed to go in. It doesn't have to be constant. It keeps on changing for everyone once in a while. And how does it contribute to resilience? Purpose is a way to know which direction do you want to go in. And when you know that the place that you want to go in, all the setbacks, all the hurdles are temporary. And that is how you build on your resilience capacity. Number five, and the last one, is the positive relationships. It has been proven by numerous researchers in the positive psychology domain that positive relationships serve as the foundation for any experiences we have in life and the personality that we develop as an adult and even as a child. Social support is very, very important in building resilience. Now let me talk about the work of Angela Duckworth, a very renowned researcher in the field. She uh, she is a very prominent field in the uh, field of uh, grit and resilience. She wrote a book called Grit that has been a bestseller for 21 weeks in New York. And in her book, she talks about ways to build resilience. But the most important and keynote point from the book to take away home is that resilience is something that you can build on. Resilience is something that you can work to create and enhance. It is not a thing that people with high IQ have. And that is exactly what she proved in the book with all the researches that she did at University of Pennsylvania. So the good news is that you can build on your resilience and you can survive in the calamities and the crisis. That's it from my side. Thank you.
thank you so much, Divisha. Next, we have Karishma Singla, who will be talking about the 7 C's of resilience and how parents can help the children build it further.
Hello everyone. So I'm going to talk about 7 C's of resilience and how parents can help their children build it. In Kenneth Ginsburg's new book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens, he talks about the 7 C's of resilience, that is, competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. Now I'm going to talk about each one of them one by one. The first one is competence. It is the ability or know how to handle situations effectively. It is not a vague feeling or hunch that I can do this. Competence is acquired through actual experience. Children can't become competent without first developing a set of skills that allows them to trust their judgments, make responsible choices, and face difficult situations. Parents can help encourage their children to focus and build on their strengths, and they should also let children make safe mistakes so they have the opportunity to right themselves. Confidence. The second one is confidence. True confidence True confidence, the solid belief in one's own abilities, is rooted in competence. Children gain confidence by demonstrating their competence in real situations. Children who experience their own competence and know they are safe and protected develop a deep seated security that promotes the confidence to face and cope with challenges. Parents can help their children by praising children honestly and specifically. Rather than, you are a great artist, say, I love the colors you used in that painting. Look at the bright red and blue birds. Specific praise is more believable, and your feedback will have more impact. The third one is connection. Children with close ties to family, friends, school, and community are more likely to have a solid sense of security that produces strong values and prevents them from seeking destructive alternatives. Family is the central force in any child's life, but connections to civic, educational, religious, and athletic groups can also increase a children's sense of belonging to a wider world and being safe within it. The fourth one is character. Children need a fundamental sense of right and wrong to ensure they are prepared to make wise choices, contribute to the world, and become stable adults. Parents can help by talking to their children about how their behaviors affect other people in good way and bad ways, and also by working with children to clarify and express their own values. The fifth one is contribution. When children realize that the world is a better place because they are in it, they understand the importance of personal contribution. They gain a sense of purpose that can motivate them. They will not only take actions and make choices that improve the world, but they will also enhance their own competence, character, and sense of connection. Parents can help by teaching the importance of serving others. Coping. Children who learn to cope effectively with stress are prepared to overcome life's challenges. Parents can help by assisting children in understanding the difference between a real crisis and something that just feels like one in the moment. The last one is control. When children realize that they can control the outcomes of their decisions and action, they are more likely they are more likely to know that they have the ability to do what it takes to bounce back. On the other hand, if parents make all the decisions, children are denied opportunities to learn control. Parents can help by encouraging children to recognize even their small successes so they know they can succeed. Helping children develop social and emotional skills through the seven C's paves the way for success in academia and life, and it is something we can learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Karishma. Next, we have Mitali Rathi, who will be talking about PTSD and how resilience can help during the moments of stress and anxiety. Mitali.
Thanks, Apollina. Hello, everybody present in the webinar today. It is an extreme pleasure to speak in front of such highly esteemed panelists. Jumping right onto the topic, each of us might be familiar with a traumatic experience, but the adversity increases when it is PTSD. So, what is PTSD? Severe anxiety, PTSD is a severe anxiety disorder that can develop after exposure to any event that results in psychological trauma, overwhelming an individual's ability to cope. What are the major symptoms of PTSD? There are intrusive thoughts, flashbacks of past traumatic events, nightmares, night terrors, disturbance in sleeping and eating pattern, bedwetting, basically all of which that leads to considerable social, occupational, and interpersonal dysfunction. So, what are the root causes of PTSD? It could be childhood sexual abuse, military combat, violent personal assault, natural or man made disasters, rape, incest, diagnosis of any life threatening illness, hospitalization in an ICU, or any such thing. So, what essentially happens in the brain structure of a person with PTSD? Imaging studies have revealed that there is a decreased volume of hippocampus, amygdala, and anterior cingulate cortex. Hippocampus is responsible for our memories. Amygdala is a storehouse for emotion and fears, and anterior cingulate cortex is responsible for it's a storehouse for our experiences. So, according to the studies done, it was observed whenever the person was exposed to a traumatic memory, there was a high range of activities in all of these major brain areas. What can be a treatment approach? Traumatized individuals are often more comfortable seeking assistance only from their primary care provider, and we should respect this. We should not nudge constantly that I will be able to help you or something like that. Never. It is, yes, helpful to engage the significant family member because the difficulties and stresses that they might face are very subjective. What are the specific psychological treatment approaches? One is pharmacotherapy, that is medicine. Second, that is psychotherapy, that uses cognitive therapy that focuses on challenging dysfunctional automatic thoughts that may develop following trauma exposure. And the third is anxiety management. The main purpose of all of this is to regain the self esteem and attaining greater control over impulses and affect are also desired in many instances. Now, how will resilience help? So, what is resilience? Resilience is defined as a dynamic ability to adapt successfully in the face of any adversity, trauma, threat, or any insignificant stress. What will resilience do? It will help us controlling our own fear and worry. It will make us stronger. It is a self distraction from an uneasy episode. It is like a guided self dialogue. We know that our treatment is working better when the person has built resilience in those memories and has no longer have escalated activities in those brain areas that we discussed earlier. Now, there are two essential resilience techniques that can help anybody facing anxiety, stress, or having a traumatic episode. One is called grounding technique. What is grounding technique? Grounding techniques help an individual to come back from the aroused, uncomfortable state to reality. It is essential that the person is brought to reality while having the flashback of memory and experience. What does happen in this activity? The person is supposed to be asked to checking the windows in the room, to be asked to count the number of electrical outlets in the room around, to check the cushion of the chair or the sofa, is it smoother or softer? Basically bringing mind to reality, to present, to part ways from the traumatic episode. Controlled breathing, asking them to see or figure out colors that they can see outside their windows, and etc. And this last technique can be helpful to any of us during any kind of stress. All of us go to stress, face stress in our regular day to day activities, right? I would request if you all can to start this activity with me. Start by placing one hand right in front of you, spread your fingers wide apart. Using the pointer finger of the opposite hand, begin to trace up the outside of the thumb as you inhale deeply. Now, trace the inside of the thumb as you exhale. Repeat this for the remaining fingers, making sure to inhale while you trace up the finger and exhale as you trace down. Pause afterwards to reflect on feelings and repeat as needed. All of us face some angry moments or stress or anything. Try doing this mindful breathing exercise, and I guarantee you, you will feel so light and so energetic after this. You will want to change whatever you've done. In the end, I would want to summarize by this catchphrase that I swear by. There are only three things that we have control in our life: the thoughts you think, the images you visualize, and the actions you take. So we should do all of them wisely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mitali. It was indeed a great and very refreshing exercise. And next, we have Shweta Shah, who will be talking about building emotional resilience through mindfulness. Shweta, can we please have you on board? Yes.
Hello, everyone. So, let me start by introducing emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is an art of living that is entwined with self belief, self compassion, and enhanced cognition. It is the way through which we empower ourselves to perceive adversities as just temporary and keep evolving through pain and sufferings. In a broad way, it means bouncing back from a stressful encounter and not letting it affect our internal motivation in any way. There are three major, very important elements of emotional resilience. Firstly, is the physical element, which involves physical strength, energy, good health, and vitality. Second is mental or psychological element, which includes aspects like attention and focus, self-esteem, emotional awareness and regulation, self-expression, thinking, and reasoning abilities. Thirdly is the social element, which includes your interpersonal relationships, group conformity, likability, communication, and cooperation. Moving on to mindfulness, mindfulness is the practice of bringing your awareness to what you're experiencing in the present, both internally and externally, and without any judgment aspect. So it is like a wake up call to become conscious of the ways we perceive and respond to life situations. So, whenever we experience any kind of negative emotion, it is important that we do not ruminate on it, do not think more of it, rather trying to let go of it because they are no longer useful. There has been a lot of research done in this area which reliably confirms that psychological resilience is more pronounced in mindful people, thereby increasing their life satisfaction. Also, many bigger organizations and MNCs in today's time run mindfulness programs for their employees to improve their emotional resilience and reduce stress. Now, let me continue by giving you 5 mindfulness practices or exercises which you can do in order to increase your emotional resilience. Firstly, is take 5. So, here you close your eyes with your right hand, gently squeeze the thumb of your left hand and take slow, deep breaths. Then do the same with each finger, one at a time. Now go on and do the same with the other hand. This helps to quiet your mind and regulate your emotions. You can do it with your eyes open too. Moving on to the next exercise, it is called lip tap. Using your 2 fingers of your dominant hand, gently tap your upper lip like this. Tapping on your lip causes salivation, that is making spit. By making spit, we are giving signals to our brain and body that we are safe, which calms our body and our entire nervous system. Third is self-hug. Now, place your left hand under your opposite arm and place the other hand on the upper part of your other arm. Pay attention to the body. Allow yourself to feel contained and take deep breaths like you can also swing from side to side while you give yourself a self hug. It helps you to feel safe and much more calmer because it gives you a realization that you are with yourself. Fourth exercise is just breathe. So here you breathe in through your nose, hold for a count of 3 while your muscles tense, and then breathe out through the mouth and relax your muscles like sometimes it helps to also put your hand on your belly while you do it because it helps you to focus on your breath. You can stand, sit, or lay down while doing this exercise. You can do 10 breaths and then check it for yourself. The breath work itself brings oxygen to the brain and the body, which helps you to relax. And the count that you engage in keeps the brain engaged. The fifth exercise is drink up. Drink a glass of water, a full glass. Take your time, but drink all of it at once, not in intervals, but all at once. This helps on many levels. It gives you redirection and something to focus on outside of what is upsetting you. Drinking water also helps to flush cortisol, which is the stress hormone, out of your body. Drinking water also causes your mouth to salivate, which tells your brain that you are safe. Now, whenever you feel stressed or burnout, these activities will help you move out of that tense or stressful situation, and you can make them a part of your daily routine too. They can be done anywhere, and these are very simple to do. Wishing you good health and increased emotional resilience in this trying time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shweta. Now we have Ms. Anantya Rai, who will be talking about mindful resilience during the pandemic.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Anantya, and I want to start by saying a very big thank you for giving me this opportunity to present here today and be a part of this webinar. Diving right into the topic, I will be talking about mindful resilience during the pandemic and how to build it. A virus pandemic, climate change disasters, racial and ethnic conflicts, economic inequality, democracy in decline. The world appears to be in a disarray, and a connected fallout is our emotional and mental health. The need for coping skills and particularly resilience has never been greater. Psychologists define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threat, or a significant source of stress, such as family and relationship problems, life altering health problems, disasters, and even COVID 19, something that we all are seeing the effects of today. Everybody has resilience. It's just a question of how much and how well you put it into use. Resilience doesn't mean the person doesn't feel the intensity of the event or problem. Instead, it just means that they found a good way of dealing with it more quickly than others. Researchers in this field of study have concluded that resilience is mostly cultivated from within by how we perceive and then react to the stressors around us. Mindful people can better cope with difficult thoughts and emotions without becoming overwhelmed or emotionally shutting down. Pausing and observing the mind may help us from getting stuck in our story and, as a result, empower us to move forward. At the start of the pandemic, some people enjoyed more relaxed lockdown measures, while others felt safer through strict isolation. Still, overall, the mental health effects of lockdown did not fail to appear. People reported feeling more agitated, more stressed, more restless, and even having more sleepless nights. Even though they feel stronger in their power to overcome stress and loneliness in the midst of the pandemic, that does not make them feel emotionally better or less wary, leading to a decline in mental health. Emotional resilience is not about winning the battle, it's the strength to power through the storm and keep the sail steady. It means bouncing back from a stressful encounter and not letting it affect our internal motivation. When we are resilient, we not only adapt ourselves to stress and disappointments, but we also grow the insight to avoid actions that might lead us to face such situations. Coping with stress, or better to say, effectively coping with stress, contributes directly towards building resilience. The whole idea of being emotionally resilient revolves around how well we are able to handle stress step by step every day, and ultimately that leads us to become overall resilient human beings. Now, I will be talking about three activities which can help us build resilience during this pandemic. The first one being managing our expectations. Just because you have more time on your hand doesn't mean you have to be super productive. If you don't meet goals at times, it's okay. A huge part of building resilience is being compassionate and kind with yourself. A way to cope with this is to identify how you are spending your time differently now that we're in a pandemic. For example, draw a circle that represents your day and think about how you divide it up. What proportion is sleep, work, exercise, or any other activity? How does this compare to earlier? How is this compared to now when we are in the middle of lockdown or in a pandemic? Once you've identified what you're doing with your time, you might be more realistic with how you divide it up going forward and let go of things that you don't need to be doing. We only have 24 hours in the day, and it's important that we take time out for ourselves. It's not selfish, it's just a way to build resilience. Second is to be optimistic. To help foster a positive attitude, write down one thing a day that gives you joy. It may be a recipe you made, a new idea, even an exercise routine you accomplished, or even spending time with a loved one. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. At the end of the week, you'll have seven. When you begin to notice things that give you joy, even in terms of times of crisis, a balance and a sense of gratitude, it is actually healing. Finally, being mindful helps manage uncertainty. No one knows what the future holds, but what you do know for certain is what's happening in this very present moment. Take a few moments to truly observe and appreciate where you are and what you're doing. As we focus on the present, it provides an important grounding for us and an anchor to say, I don't know what's coming, but I do know where I am now. And where I am now, many times, is actually not so bad. At the same time, it's important to remember that the pandemic is far from over, and that brings out an even greater reason to practice resilience, not only for our own safety, but also for those around us. We all should adopt a strategy of mindful optimism, in which you make a strategy and then carry on with living. Particularly in the time of the pandemic and heightened uncertainty, it can be challenging to remain mindfully present and optimistic. However, a mindful optimism strategy under the pandemic includes social distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands, and carrying on with life in a healthy manner, knowing this too shall pass. I will conclude by saying this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anantya. It was indeed very informative. Now, may I please request Ms. Vinita Bakshi to introduce our guest of honor, our keynote speaker, Dr. Tulsi.
Thank you, Apolena. Thank you, girls. You were all so good. I'm really proud of you. Homo sapiens are 200 to 300,000 years old. We have survived and tamed disease, predators. Believe me, we are a very resilient lot and we are not going anywhere. And pandemic will be over sooner than we think. Very warm welcome, Dr. Tulsi. Dr. Tulsi is a PhD in psychiatry, clinical psychology from BHU. His examiners and trainers in the field of therapy were late Dr. Wolf, Professor Zolman, Garfield, Dr. Ratan Singh, noted behavior therapists of the world repute. He has treated and rehabilitated more than 50,000 clients and patients. At present, director of Deva Center Varanasi and CEO Changemakers, which deals with mental health issues. Recently received Lifetime Achievement Award from Banaras Hindu University. And recently, Government of India has made him member of NIMH Secunderabad. He also recently became member of High Fundamental Research Team in the area of genome research at BHU. He has also been made technical member of WHO in collaboration with Delhi University to work in the area of domestic violence against women. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Tulsi, and kindly we are eagerly waiting for your keynote address. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vinita. And thank you so much, all the interns, including the girl who was presiding over, and Divisha, Karishma, Mitali, and Shweta, and Anantya, I think. Anantya, yeah. All of them are very smart, and I see a great potential of very good counselors in them in coming near times and future times. All of them are doing wonderfully good. I can hear them. I heard them, and I saw them that all of them are very, very focused And it seems that they're very much interested in the field of psychology and human sciences, especially the mental health part. So Vinita, first of all, congratulations to you for choosing such nice and smart girls to work in the area of mental health. And we need really good counselors, very clear good counselors who can, we still lack thousands of counselors in India who are good in mental health healing and mental health curative parts. Apart from so-called clinical psychologists, we need very good counselors, personal counselors. And I think it is a very good team being built by Ambra Foundation. And definitely they will make a mark in the field, but that's what my expectation is. Now, coming to the point of resilience, yes, as all of you talked about resilience quite a lot, and but I would like to share based on my experiential knowledge with it is, yes, it is a capacity of human body, and as Vinita ji told, in our Homo sapiens, it is this body is in this thing, this trait is inbuilt. It's an inbuilt trait. It has some genetic inheritance also, which we have to go more deeper into see, but it develops, and it is the capacity of the body to come back in its original form. It is come back in original form after a heavy stress, after a heavy strain or tension. It is the flexibility like a snake. As snake is flexible, the body becomes flexible and adapts to this kind of stress which suddenly has occurred. It can be, the stress can be of multitude dimensions. It can be stress of wars, it can be stress of destructions, it can be stress of various other traumatic events like rape or mass rape or gang rapes and domestic violences or shootouts or very severe traumas. But what happens that the best part of his resilient persons comes back into their original way. Their homeostatic balance and their, if you people can understand homeostatic balance of the body, their psychosomatic balance, their physiology is so much tuned, it becomes so much tuned that they come back. For example, if you look into the historical things, then like Hiroshima and Nagasaki war, great atomic war, people came back with a double the force. Japan rose up. So this is the country's resilience. It tolerated spring, it's like a spring, it pressed, then again come up. Same way like partition in India, 1947. You know, after that, now you have stories and stories where people went through all the atrocities, and then after that they came up with full force, and now they are completely well-balanced people, well-balanced families who are doing great job. Similarly, the India, if Indian situation, if you take Indian armed forces, they are really the example of resilience. They are considered one of the best forces in the world for their resilience part, especially the commandos. And they're trained in this. They're trained in this. To how to be resilient in physical level, mental level, emotional level, so that any trauma they go through it, they come back with a stronger force, not even a single grain of damage. on their mental, physical, or emotional level. We have stories in our war stories where people like Shaitan Singh and others who were in the first war, Chinese aggression and places, they won Parambir Chakras. They were resilient people, went through all the bombardments, went through most difficult terrains, but their body, mind, emotionality, they were so tuned up, they were so much resilient that ultimately when they came back, they came with full happiness, with full laurels. We have World War diaries like Anna Karina diary. If anybody goes through Anna Karina diary, then she will, what a resilient woman she was. So resilience has come across everywhere in our world literature, and historically it is in almost every country's literature you will find resilient people. And even in India, Eastern approaches, my dear students, they are all Eastern approaches have one important element, first element in Eastern spiritual approaches, that is to make the sadhak, the shishya, the trainer resilient. He is first step in yoga also. Yam, niyam, dhyan, dharana, they are all to make you resilient, to make your body resilient, to make your emotion resilient, to make your cognition resilient without disturbing or getting disturbed, maintaining the same happiness factor. So in India, we have saints like Mahatma Buddha, we have Ramakrishna Paramhans, we have almost all the Sant Parampara. We had a period which is known as period of saints. All these saints, they were truly resilient people, living in the most difficult circumstances, but in a most beautiful way. That is the appropriate answer. For them, challenges are like flowers. They take it as flowers. For them, challenge is not horrifying. For them, challenge is not escaping from the situation, but to face it, to enjoy it, and to understand it, and even to if you commit a mistake also, but to learn from the mistake, not to escape from the mistake. So resilient people in India also we have, and based on that, what you all of you have explained about various factors, various ways, meditative ways, various behavioral exercises, very nice exercises were suggested by some of the interns, and some of the persons. But one thing is definite, that these resilient people are very self-aware people. They know what they are, what is their weakness, what is their strength, they know very well. And they work on it. They don't escape from it. And they are very flexible people. Just now, a few days back, I had a chance, and maybe I will send you people the photograph also. In Benares, I met a person who is known as Shiva Baba. It is not a person like other with some sect and people followers or things. He stays in a very normal house alone. And what is his quality? His quality is that he is 126 years old, living person, born in 1896.
Wow.
Is it not unbelievable? Born in 1896. He has seen First World War, he has seen Second World War, he has seen Hitler, he has seen Bhagat Singh, he has seen Chandrasekhar, and now also he can thread, he can put a he put a taga into a sui without eye glasses.
My God.
He has full teeth and he walks faster than me. He sits down, and if he sits in the ground and gets up, you and me will be slower in getting up than him. I was just flabbergasted to see him. I thought somebody who will be on the bed, but he came downstairs, coming to the gate to receive me. He said, Tulsi, come upstairs. I said, maybe he's taking me to the person concerned. Then when I went upstairs, I said, where is Baba? He said, I'm standing in front of you. See my stomach? Touch me. He eats nothing. Now that's the part. He eats nothing. Only 2 rotis and some chokha in the morning, and 2 rotis and some chokha in the evening. That's it. And water. I said, you are Amrit Putra. What is the story behind you? He said, nothing. I said, no, there is something very good about you. Tell me about your food habits and your resilience, power of resilience. You went through all the traumas of the world and still you are happy. What is the key? What is the key of happiness? So one of the things he told, I said, we are all suffering in this COVID time. He said, I attribute everything to this consciousness. I am nothing. I am nothing. Everything what he allows me. I said, who is he? He said, that power, that energy which operates us. This is Eastern civilization, my dear children, understand it. We believe in that consciousness which guides us, which empowers our Atman, which is the deep core part of our spirituality. And that is India's greatness to withstand all these pandemics, not the medicines. We are born with it. Every day in the morning, we don't do prayer only on Sundays. Our prayer is our ingredient in ourself. We fold our hands and pray in the morning. That's natural. We believe, somebody believes in Allah, somebody believes in God, irrespective of that. That is one thing. The core factor of resilience is to have a strong faith and belief system in our values. From the childhood, even now also, there are places in India very close to Delhi, and one can go and witness in that particular place in Agra, which is known as Dayal Bagh in Agra, that is Radha Swami faith. You can find a 6 months babies being put in the fields. This time, when the mothers are cutting the seedlings of gehu or rice, this crop, wheat crop, babies are there in the field in the afternoons, enjoying the heat. Everything is to make body, mind, emotion resilient, strong. And as some of the interns said, this is just not inborn. It can be developed by certain processes. And one of the strong processes, for especially during this COVID times, to develop resilience is to keep not social distance. We have certainly understood it little wrongly. We have to maintain physical distance. We have to be closely in social, not social distancing, social closeness. This is one very important thing we have to understand. It is not social distancing. It is physical distancing, social closeness. We have to have more connectivity. We have to talk to the people who have COVID also. It is just not people who don't have COVID. We have to talk on telephone to the people. We have to do counseling for them also, as I'm doing now. At present, every day I do 10, at least minimum 10 people who have COVID online. I give them mindfulness meditation technique. I make them do it. I make them this, what you said just now, she was mentioning about grounding techniques to bring your best resourceful state, positive state. And believe me, the more a person with COVID has this resilience, if you can develop this mindfulness meditation, their recovery rate is very fast. But if they are not resilient, if they have PTSD trauma, which are controlled by chemicals and other things and other pursuits, then definitely the attack of the disease is much more stronger. This is a very well-known fact now. Now in California, there are about more than 18,000 references only on mindfulness meditation. So you can imagine, this is only, I'm talking about one type of meditation, that is mindfulness. We have innumerable number of meditative techniques in India, starting from breathing techniques. Just now, she mentioned about a ratio breathing. The ratio breathing is from Raja Yoga, from Vivekananda, which is known as ratio breathing. We have techniques from Tibetan monasteries, where Tibetan monastery mein, the last stage of training a Lama is to develop his resilience. How? The Lama is put with wet clothes inside the eyes and covered with ice, like a grave, they grave and put him inside and they cover him up to the neck with wet clothes. And then he is told that with your mindfulness, meditation and resilience, dry those clothes, produce the heat. So resilience can change your complete internal autonomy, your physiology to powerful strength. Tell me one very simple thing. Many people, Navaratri is coming, they keep fast for 9 days even. I know people, many people I know. From first day to 9th day, they are on fast. No food eating, nothing. But they see, they give more glow, more power to their body. How it is possible? It is just their development of resilience. They develop their resilience, so their immune system also becomes stronger. So in this COVID times, it is very important what all of you said, that we have to tell, especially in COVID wards, somewhere if you can work or if you people want guidance on that, I can suggest you the various intricate techniques. Later on, if some girl wants to know, she can phone me and I can tell her if she's guiding somebody, what way to guide a COVID person. The person who has no COVID, okay, he can be developed in, but think of a person who has COVID. And 14 days quarantine is like a next life for him. It is not only in the house, in the hospital also. When he is having mask in his face, imagine when he comes out from there, what will be his condition? So we have to make warriors. That is why we are called warriors. And we also tell people who have fought with the COVID as warriors, because they are real commandos. They are commandos who have withstood the utmost difficult circumstances of life. And that can be very well achieved, but what you have talked, what Vinita ji expressed, and this is a beautiful topic which can be further taken care by many other people. And this really brings resilience, mindfulness meditation. In fact, we should develop a connectivity, and connectivity is also a part. The more you are connected with people, more your resilience will develop. The more you are assertive in your communication. Gandhiji, take the example of Gandhiji. What had he? Has nothing. Only thing he was he was very well connected with all, even the poorest of the poor. He was connected. That's why Gandhi became Gandhi. It's a consciousness. Gandhi is no more a word. It's a part of consciousness. And the connectivity is very important to develop resilience. The more people are disconnected, compartmentalized, which happens in the West, the nuclear families, the small families, just caring for yourself. That is why it is said that in resilience, you have empathy, you have love, you have empathy for others, you have empathy for nature, you have empathy for sun, you have empathy for plants and trees. So one of the things to be resilient is to care for nature. If you care for nature, it will nurture you, my dear. If you care for the nature, we thought that nature means only outside nature. No, I'm talking of both natures, your own nature inside and the nature outside. If you care for that, if you're conscious about that, and some girl mentioned also, to being in the present, very important factor. If we can develop people to live in the present, just to folded hands, to live in the present, to feel the warmth of the hands, to feel the heart of the others. It's a great part. Generally, we like dangle between pendulum, like a watch pendulum. We are either in the future, we are either in the past. We are either in the future, we are either in the past. So we keep on going like pendulum, but we never stay at the present. So resilience, to develop resilience, is to make people aware of the present. So that what was awareness exercises some of the girls mentioned. The best exercise is to sit down, just sit down, do nothing. One of the best exercise is to sit down and do nothing. Now question comes, how can we do nothing? That's the most difficult part, doing nothing. And that is one of the very great exercises of Buddhism, which comes from Vipassana. In that state, you sit down, just close your eyes, just nothing, just watch your thoughts. Let your thoughts come and go. Don't stop them. Don't get horrified from them. Let all the thoughts, whether good, bad, ugly, any thought, let them come. My dear students, it is really difficult, but not impossible. You try it. I'm giving you a very simple exercise of my last 30 to 40 years time, which I have done it. And I have found tremendous results in trauma affected people. You cannot tell them, stop it. The more you tell, stop it, our brain is a monkey brain. It will keep on jumping. एक बार ऐसे ही once upon a time, a vyapari was a businessman was there in Bombay. He called people, said, bring 1 glass of water and I give you 1 glass of gold. He only took 500 rupees. And he said, in 500, I will make your glass of water into glass of gold. Oh, there was queues and lines, thousands of people with 1 glass of water. He said, bring 1 glass of water. into my room. So one by one, when he called one person into room, he said, sit down before the glass of water. They sat down. Then he gave him a stick, a small stick, and then said, rotate it around. Hello.
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 Yes.
Can you hear me on? Can
Yes.
you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So he said, rotate this.
Hello, Dr. Tulsi. We are not able to hear you. Yes, now we can hear.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Yes. So he said, rotate it around 13 times, but during that rotation, बंदर का ख्याल मत करना. He said not to bring memory of a monkey on the tree. What will happen? The monkey image will definitely come. This is what you have to catch it. The more you tell the brain not to do it, the brain is going to do it. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear my last sentence?
Yes.
Can you hear my last sentence?
Yes.
So the more you tell brain not to do, it will do. So to develop resilience, you need to be, that's why awareness never stops you from doing anything. It makes you feel, it makes you see, it makes you smell, it makes you hear. All the five sensors are maximum utilized. That is awareness. So with this, I would like to say thank you once again for inviting me, Vinita ji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And if any question is there, I can answer to them if they want anything.
Yes. We do have a few questions for you. And
Yes.
the very first question is from Divisha.
Yes.
And it is, how do you stay resilient when you have lost someone to death?
Yes. That is very important. That's very important. As I told you, that resilience is not, Divisha, dependent only on one factor. It's a multifactorial, okay? And it all depends upon how from childhood you have been brought up, how you have been educated, nurtured by your parents or close people, and how you're developing, how your personality on physical, mental, emotional level developing. If it has that attitudes which are not based on what I talk, which are based on just the opposite of what I talk, like high materialistic lifestyle, how much you're selfish, how much you are just involved for yourself, how much you don't care for others, how much you don't share with others, how much you are not affected by other people. So if and how what kind of deep spiritual philosophy has been valued in you, what kind of prayers or things you do, what kind of, so all these things make a very big base for you to stand on it and to face any challenge. So especially with challenge like death or bereavement comes, so naturally our whole physiological mechanism shakes over. Our hormones, our endocrine glands, our physiology, it gets a shock. But if your resilience is good, then it gradually takes about 3 to 6 months time. The bereavement stress in Indian scenario, generally it is said 1 year, but in 3 to 6 months time, a resilient person gradually comes back into his normal senses, and his own internal dialogue. Generally resilient people have more positive dialogue with themselves. So his own internal dialogue brings him back into normalization state of thing. People, who are not resilient, generally with them, problem takes place. They develop certain psychosomatic disorders, sleep disturbances, unable to, they get fainting spells or certain other conversion reactions or anxiety disorders or trauma situations. But people who are resilient, they come back with full force that we are fine again. Now life has to go on. Yes. Could I answer to your some of the point? Hello?
Yes,
I can see a question from Dr. Padma also, Apollina.
yes, we do have a question from Dr. Padmavati as well. And she
Yes.
asked, is it good to develop detachment in life?
Detachment, detachment in life. Now question comes that it should not be frustrating detachment. Your happiness should not be disturbed. You can detach yourself from pleasures. See, there is two things, Dr. Padma. One is pleasures, one is happiness. Pleasures are temporary, transient, and one pleasure leads to another pleasure, another to another pleasure. Pleasures are never ending. If you eat one kind of ice cream, you feel like eating Sunday special. If you have one kind of masala dosha, you feel like eating Mysore dosha. If you eat in 3 star, then you feel like eating 5 star, 5 star, 7 star. So there is no end to it. One type of clothes, these are all pleasures. But there is another part, which is happiness. Happiness is not transient, it is permanent. It remains all the time. And that happiness is more from heart. I call it two places. Pleasures are from monkey house, that is your brain, and happiness is from house of silence, your heart. So this happiness can be only built based on mindfulness meditation. So if you can detach yourself from all the pleasuring aspects, making the life simple, and attaching more yourself to happiness mode, that even in detachment also you're happy. So in that way, detachment is good because it's for another path to travel towards more deeper states, to have the feeling of deep meditation, the happiness, love, affection, empathy, which all even Dalai Lama used to say when I was having a conversation with him. Dalai Lama also mentioned this. Tulsi, we have to have more of your question is very strong, that we have to have more detachment, not from your internal awakening state, but you have to have more detached from external pleasure aspects so that you can go deeper into yourself. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Tulsi. We are running out of time. However, perhaps we can take two more questions if you would like, if you're comfortable.
Yes, I will feel pleased if I could answer any question.
So,
I'll try.
yes, the first question is, how do cultural beliefs play a role in a person's resilience?
Yes, see, there are two things. One is, when you say cultural, it includes culture-based and also religion-based. Culture includes many things. So it includes culture-based and religion-based. But we have to have a power of discrimination, that they should not be blind beliefs which are based on no kind of uh, uh, any base, like shamanic rituals or things which are not in the mainstream of the culture. We have to be careful with that, because if we develop such kind of beliefs, they make us more of a anxiety based person rather than resilient person, which maximum happens in the case of OCDs, obsessive compulsive disorder. The one of the deep reason of obsessive compulsive disorder in a woman is her cultural belief system. And these misconceptions are the most difficult part to be removed. The therapy session for these misconceptions are my strongest things. That's cultural beliefs affecting person's personal life and spoiling him. So we have to have a very good discriminatory power to understand that this particular belief or this particular cultural or socio-cultural or religious belief has nothing to do, and it is absurd. It is nowhere written. They're all just man-made things. So such beliefs sometimes disturb us. And they are the things which brings psychosomatic, psychoneurotic personalities. So we have to be very careful in that. Not all beliefs should be taken into account as a positive thing.
Thank you.
Yes.
And the last question is, how is resilience built during an ongoing trauma?
See, when ongoing trauma, when trauma is ongoing, for example, let us practically take example of a person getting suddenly, he comes to know, his family comes to know that he is COVID-19 positive. A trauma has taken place. Trauma has taken place. His sleep is disturbed. He is anxious, worried, concerned. All the time he's hyper alert. What to do? Quarantined. Everybody talking to him about things. Everybody talking to him about various kinds of foods. Everybody talking to him what care he should take, UV light, kadhas, and everything. Now, what he should do? Tremors, trembling. He can't go out. 15 days he is again he has to be tested. Maybe others are infected. So this is a trauma which is happening. At that time, the best part is to have a soothing words with him, not with overloading of instructions. We have to sit down, we have to understand him. By a closed system, maybe by phone also, by video calls also, we can sit down, listen to him. And this trauma counseling, it is one of the major part that when a person is undergoing trauma, what to talk, what not to talk, what words to use, what words not to use. Because your words only can increase his trauma. So we have to be very careful. We cannot use with a traumatized person anything whatever we say. उसी समय में हम समझाने लगे उसको कि तुमको कुछ नहीं हुआ. अरे कुछ नहीं हुआ है. I'm traumatized, man. कुछ नहीं हुआ है. हुआ है. You have to say हुआ है. And I understand. So your words will help a traumatized person. Minimum words are to be used. One thing is true. Minimum words, maximum feelings, positive feelings for him. Then his trauma, he will feel comfortable first. Then gradually shifting him, just now one of the girls also suggested, shifting his attention to more positive activities, positive incidents of his life. You know, when you meet any old person, never talk how he is now. When you meet any old person, when you sit down, it's a very difficult thing to sit down with an old person and talk to him or talk to her. The best way to talk to an old person is to talk about his youth, his days, and you will see a glow in his face. All positivity will come up. But if you talk about his present problems, uska khasi जुकाम, uska bukhar, uski tabiyat ka kharab hona, you are talking more negative to him. He will go more down. But if you meet a person, old person, a traumatized person, always talk to him of his good old part. Shift him towards good old part. Then once he is involved in that, the same positive chemicals will be released. That is one very important thing you should know. The more you repeat negative parts, more negative chemicals are released. And the more negative chemicals are released, more depressed you will become. So that is why I said, I gave a press conference recently. I said, don't use the word corona. Use the word hasona. In place of corona, start using the word hasona. What will happen? Suddenly, when you start using the word hasona, so what will happen? People will laugh. And that is complete shift in your emotional state. That from a very sad part, you are coming towards the hasona state. So that is what is needed when a trauma is going on, ongoing trauma is going on. You should never talk about his negative component or incident, what happened, where did you go, what did you eat, what caused you this problem. No, never, never, never. This is a wrong counseling. When a person comes to you, my dear students, okay, he told, enough. Now go back, give him a positive signal that you are with him. But that you can only give when you talk positive to him. And this is a skill which all you have to develop in your future times. And we, myself and Vinita, are there for you to develop this skill. Thank you. Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
thank you.
You're lost. Where are you?
Thank you, Dr. Tulsi.
Yes.
Thank you so
That's
much.
good.
And Vinita ma'am, would you like to share some words here?
I want to hear from interns one word. How do they like what me and Vinita have conducted today? I just want immediate feedback. One second feedback. Is it
Sir,
possible?
I loved it. Yes, sir. Immediately.
Tell your name because I have your names in front of me so I can understand who is speaking.
Sir, I am Divisha.
Divisha. How did you like this entire
Yes.
conversation which we did today?
Yes, sir. I loved it. Great insights.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. That what was the purpose of webinar, this webinar. Who else want to say anything? You can say, we are all like friends. You can talk, no problem. Anybody wants to say something, can say. You should not stop your ideas. You should say. That is one of the things counselors have to learn. Say what.
Tulsi, I want to really thank you for connecting to the spirituality and the way which we are going into this COVID pandemic situations. In fact, so many other things like some of the things which you talked about, the mystic person which you met. This really resounds the person like Sadhguru. I know very much because I know that how he has gone through all this thing. So this is a kind of, you connected us back to our roots, in fact, like Kundalini meditation. The girls are talking about with the hand, the meditations, and which people like us do this in the mornings sometimes, but the resilient type of a thing. And I had also gone through a lot of traumatic loss in my life, like lost my parents, a lot of other things happened, doctor. But then I became very resilient because I stood very strongly with the meditations and all, which really given from my parents, from the spirituality side, which you connected very well. I think these are the
Thank
things
you.
youth has to understand these things, Dr. G. That's where I think you need to have more webinars like this so that you can educate these children who goes very fast into depressions and a kind of they
Yes.
lose paths and go into so many other vices, and then they
Exactly.
don't have they have always have a dark ends. I think you had done it remarkably, you and I think I must thank Vinita. She's like no, very close to me, and I admire the way she took this subject, and she talked about you a lot to me also. And I'm waiting for you to come on these things. And I really went out on some work and rushed back to listen these webinars, Dr. Sir.
So
And
nice
it's
of you.
very
So
yeah,
nice of you.
I just reached on time for the webinar. In fact, I
So
rushed to
nice.
everything
So
I
nice
can.
of you. Thank you so
And it is
much, ma'am,
and it is
for giving.
really sir given me inside of my what I think, especially in the nights. That is the time I feel no, I just put the music and then I reflect so many things which you are talking about. No, the
Exactly.
spirituality sections really comes at that time. They say that the 3 to 4:30 is a very good time. Sometimes I wake up
Exactly.
and do that. So I'm very
Exactly.
thankful, and I hope you will be coming more and teaching these things to the youths. Uh, admire this webinar very much.
Exactly. Exactly. That is what is the purpose of, I think I add to Dr. Vinita ji, that is what is the purpose of all of this exercise is to bring youth, and especially youth who are going to be our future, I mean,
Pillars
bharat
of
ke,
yes,
we
yes.
will, we have to give them proper true knowledge with resilience, one of the strongest thing, and good, very good values, very good values. See, education means making a good human being. Vivekananda said education means not books, education means woman or man, a good human being. I still remember a childhood song which तू हिंद बनेगा न मुसलमान बनेगा इंसान की औलाद है इंसान बनेगा. So we need people who are human beings. We need people who have empathy, who are caring, who is sharing, who can hold hand of old people. Don't feel ashamed. They are just not involved in themselves on their own electronic gadgets, but they are involved in others. They are not compartmentalized. They are connected. They can ask, they can say, how are you, sir? How are you, ma'am? What can I do for you? What way we can help you? Please, please. So that kind of youth, I think they are there. I'm not saying that we don't have even these students who are there. They're beautiful children. They're very well. When I see them talking, I feel, I don't know, I feel very good with them. I feel that they're so confidently speaking such a big issue. And this is all credit goes to Vinita ji, the way she handles them. Thank you so much, Vinita.
Thank you
Three
so
cheers
much
to
for
you.
coming, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Padma. Thank you in turns. Thank you, everybody. It has been such an insightful evening. And I really admire Dr. Tulsi taking out time for his busy schedule for this youth mentorship series, and which we intend continuing. And I thank everybody for joining us for this webinar on live, on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Benita. Thank you. Nice.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you, Dr. Padma. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you for organizing this, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.